This reading opens with the Hanged Man, and the energy here is raw, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Because last night, something in this divine masculine stopped fighting the truth. Not fighting you. Not fighting love, fighting himself. This card carries the energy of a man who has been suspended between what he feels and what he is afraid to say. He has been emotionally upside down, seeing everything from a different angle, realizing that the story he kept telling himself is no longer strong enough to hold. And last night, that pause became unbearable. The silence became too loud. The distance became too painful. The feelings he thought he could manage quietly rose to the surface with a force he did not expect. This was not a planned confession. This was not a dramatic performance. This was the moment where control finally lost to emotion. Let me tell you what this card is showing symbolically. The Hanged Man is not still because he is powerless. He is still because something inside him is being forced to understand. And this masculine has been in that exact space with you. He has been looking at the connection from every possible angle. Why he pulled back. Why he stayed quiet. Why he kept choosing restraint when his heart wanted honesty. And the shocking part is this. The longer he stayed still, the clearer it became. You were not the confusion. You were the truth he was avoiding. Wait, because this matters. He did not break down because he suddenly discovered his feelings. He broke down because he finally admitted they never left. That is the emotional shift here. The confession that changes everything did not begin with, "I miss you." It began with something deeper, something closer to, "I do not know how to keep pretending this person is not the one." And once those words came out, even partially, even through tears, the energy around him changed. The Hanged Man shows surrender, and last night he surrendered to what his soul already knew. You are the one he cannot release. And now we have the King of Cups. So this tells me what happened after that surrender. Because once the truth came out, he did not suddenly become loud. He became quiet in a different way, not avoidant quiet, not cold quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when a man realizes his own heart has just exposed him. The King of Cups is someone who feels deeply, but he has trained himself not to spill. He knows how to hold emotion in his chest. He knows how to look calm when the inner world is not calm at all. And that is why this is so important. This breakdown was not weakness. It was the moment his emotional control finally reached its limit. He may have sat there afterward trying to collect himself, trying to breathe normally, trying to act like he could still go back to who he was before those words came out. But he could not. Because once he admitted what you mean to him, even to himself, the mask did not fit anymore. The version of him that pretended he was fine without you started falling apart. The version of him that acted like silence was strength started feeling exposed. The version of him that convinced himself he could just keep moving, keep distracting himself, keep holding everything under the surface, finally understood something painful. He was not protecting himself from you. He was protecting himself from the truth of how much you still live inside him. And the King of Cups is showing emotional maturity, trying to rise out of emotional collapse. That matters. Because this is not just a man crying and then going back to the same pattern like nothing happened. Something in him is trying to steady itself differently now. He is trying to understand what love looks like when he can no longer hide behind pride, what apology looks like when it has to come from the heart, what honesty looks like when he knows you may feel everything he never said. And here is the part that feels heavy. That confession did not give him peace. It opened a door into grief, a door into regret, a door into the realization that loving you in silence has still been loving you. And now we have the Chariot. So this is where the energy starts to move. Because regret is no longer sitting quietly in him. It is beginning to pull on him. It is beginning to push against the part of him that kept saying, do nothing, stay composed, stay in control. But the Chariot is not passive. The Chariot is that moment where the inner conflict becomes too strong to ignore, and a person has to choose a direction. And this is where it gets heavier. Because after the mask fell, what he saw underneath was not only love, it was regret. Regret for the message he did not answer. Regret for the moment he felt you reaching for him emotionally and still acted distant. Regret for the words he swallowed because he thought silence would make him seem stronger. Regret for letting you sit with questions he already knew the answer to. That is the part that is hitting him now. He is realizing that pretending not to care did not protect the connection. It wounded it. And the most painful thing about this Chariot energy is that he can see where he held the reins too tightly. He tried to control the pace, control the vulnerability, control how much you knew, control how much of his heart was visible. But love does not respond well to being managed like a fear. And now he is seeing something he refused to see before. You were not asking him to be perfect. You were asking him to be real. You were asking him to stop hiding behind emotional distance when both of you could feel the truth sitting there between you. And I feel this masculine replaying moments, not in a casual way, in a way that stings. The times he looked calm but was panicking inside. The times he seemed cold but was scared of how much you mattered. The times he convinced himself that holding back was safer, when really it only made you feel alone in a connection he was also feeling. That is why the Chariot is here. Because regret is starting to become motion. Not just sadness, not just memory, motion. Something in him knows that if he keeps standing still now, he is not protecting himself anymore. He is choosing the pain again, and that is becoming impossible for him to justify. And now the Ace of Swords comes through. So this is the truth, cutting through the pride. This is the moment where his mind can no longer protect him from what his heart already knows. Because the Ace of Swords is clarity, not comfortable clarity, sharp clarity. The kind that does not let someone keep hiding behind excuses that used to sound convincing. And this is where the inner battle becomes very obvious. Because part of him wants to reach out. Part of him wants to say something. Part of him wants to put words around what happened inside him last night. But another part of him is terrified, not because he does not care, because he cares too much to control how you receive it. And that is the difference. This masculine is not silent because there is nothing there. He is silent because speaking now means admitting that the strong version of him was not really strong. It was guarded, it was proud, it was afraid. It was a man trying to look untouched by a connection that was touching every hidden part of him. And you felt that. That is why this matters. You were not imagining the emotion underneath his silence. You were not crazy for sensing that his distance had pain in it. You were not making up the way his energy would pull back and still somehow stay connected to you. The Ace of Swords says the truth has always been present. It was just trapped behind pride. And pride used to feel like protection to him. Pride gave him something to stand behind when vulnerability felt too exposing. Pride helped him avoid the conversation, avoid the apology, avoid the moment where he would have to look at you, even through a message, and admit that he felt more than he showed. But now pride feels different. Now it feels like a wall he built and then got stuck behind. I keep seeing someone hovering near communication. Starting the sentence, deleting it, thinking of your face, imagining your response, wondering if too much time has passed, wondering if the truth will sound too late now, and that fear is real. But the Ace of Swords does not let him stay in confusion forever. Because once the truth becomes this clear, silence stops feeling safe. It starts feeling dangerous. And now we have the Seven of Coins. So this tells me the trigger was not random. It came from something that had been growing under the surface for a long time. Because the Seven of Coins is about waiting. Looking back, standing in front of what has been planted and realizing that time did not erase it. Time only revealed what was still alive. And I feel like something small happened last night, something ordinary. A song, a picture, a place, a sentence someone said without knowing what it would open in him. Maybe even a moment where he reached for his phone and stopped himself again. But this time, stopping himself did not feel powerful. It felt painful, because the trigger was not the thing itself. It was what the thing opened. It opened the memory of you, not as an idea, not as a passing thought, as a presence. The kind of presence that can walk into a room in his mind and change the whole atmosphere. And that is what he was not prepared for. He thought he had managed the distance. He thought enough time had passed for the feeling to become smaller. He thought if he stayed busy, stayed quiet, kept choosing the practical road, eventually this connection would soften into something he could explain away. But the Seven of Coins says he looked at all that time and realized something. The feeling did not die. It matured, it got roots, it became something he could no longer call temporary. And that is why last night hit so hard, because he was not just missing you. He was seeing how long he has been carrying you, how many days he has moved through with your energy still somewhere in the background, how many times he tried to focus forward only to feel pulled back to the same truth. You. And I want you to hear this carefully. What broke him was not only the absence, it was the comparison. The realization that other things may distract him, other people may speak to him, other routines may fill his day, but they do not reach the part of him that you reached. And once he saw that, silence became unbearable in a whole new way. And now we have the sun. And this is important because the sun does not let anything stay hidden. It brings everything into the light, not to punish, not to expose for the sake of drama, but to show what is real. And what is real here is that no comparison has been able to erase you. No distraction has been able to replace the way your energy touched him. No easier path has been able to give him the same feeling of being seen. And that is the part he is understanding now, because someone else may feel simpler. Someone else may not challenge him. Someone else may not make him look at the parts of himself he has been avoiding. But simpler is not the same as true. Quitter is not the same as peaceful, and convenient is not the same as love. The sun is showing recognition, clear recognition, the kind that makes a person stop pretending they do not know the difference between warmth and light. Because you did not just comfort him, you revealed him. You brought parts of him to the surface that he did not even know were still waiting to be touched. And that is why this connection became so intense. Not because it was unstable, not because it was imagined, not because you were asking for too much, but because it showed him too much. It showed him where he was guarded, where he was afraid, where he was still carrying old pain and calling it independence, where he wanted love but did not know how to receive love without feeling exposed by it. And listen, this is not about competition. This is not about who is better. This is about resonance. There are people who can sit beside someone and still never reach their inner world. And then there is the person who walks in and suddenly every locked room inside them has light under the door. That was you. That is what he is comparing everything to. Not your appearance, not your words alone, not one moment, your effect. The way his soul responded to you. And now he is realizing the connection did not fail because the love was weak. It became frightening because it was too real. And now we have temperance. And this is where the fear becomes more complicated because temperance is not rushing. It is not chaos. It is the space between the breakdown and the decision. The space where someone has to take all those emotions that spilled out and ask, what do I do with this now? And for this masculine, the fear is not only that you might reject him. That is part of it. But that is not the deepest part. The deeper fear is accountability, because coming forward now means he cannot only say he feels something. He has to face what his silence did. He has to face the time that passed, the trust that changed, the moments where you had to hold your heart together without the clarity he could have given you. And Temperance is showing me that he knows this cannot be fixed with one emotional sentence. Not anymore. Because this is not just about confessing love. This is about restoring balance. And balance requires truth. Balance requires humility. Balance requires him to understand that your heart is not a place he can enter casually after leaving you in uncertainty. That matters because you are not being shown here as someone waiting helplessly. You are not sitting the same energy you were in before. Your silence has changed. Your presence has changed. Your patience has changed. And he can feel that. He can feel that you are no longer reaching in the same way, not because you stopped caring, but because something in you got tired of bleeding for a connection that he kept trying to control from a distance. And that is what scares him. Not just losing access to you, losing the version of you that kept believing he would choose honesty before the damage became too deep. This is where temperance becomes powerful because it is showing the difference between emotion and maturity. He can miss you. He can cry. He can confess in a moment of collapse. But can he bring peace to what he disrupted? Can he meet you with steadiness instead of intensity? Can he come forward without making you responsible for calming the storm he created? And now his fear is starting to turn into urgency because he senses it. Your energy is not chasing. It is pulling back. And that is making the truth louder than ever. And now we have the 8 of Coins reversed. And this is exactly the shift. because this is not the energy of you working harder. This is not you trying to prove your love one more time. This is not you carrying the emotional labor for two people and calling it faith. The Eight of Coins reversed says something stopped. Not because the connection stopped mattering, because you stopped abandoning yourself inside of it. And that is what he feels. That is the part that is shaking him now. You did not awaken this masculine by chasing him. You did not awaken him by explaining your heart again. You did not awaken him by begging him to understand what he should have already been willing to see. You awakened him by getting quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of waiting, not the quiet of hoping he would notice your pain. The quiet of self-respect coming back into your body, and that quiet has weight. Because before, even when you were silent, he could still feel you reaching. He could still feel your heart open. He could still feel that part of you trying to keep the door warm, even while he stood outside of it, pretending he did not know where it was. But now the energy is different. The cord feels tighter. The space feels sharper. The silence has become a mirror, and he is seeing himself in it. He is seeing where you gave effort, where you gave patience, where you gave understanding, where you kept trying to make sense of behavior that kept making you question your own worth. And now that you are not doing that in the same way, he feels the absence of your emotional work. That is important, because this masculine can feel the difference between someone who is hurt and someone who is finally choosing herself. Someone who is still waiting to be chosen, and someone who is remembering she was never supposed to beg for basic truth. This is not coldness. This is not punishment. This is your energy returning to you. And the shocking thing is, his soul is responding to that absence more loudly than it ever responded to your presence. Because now he has to feel what it is like when you stop holding the connection together alone. And now we have the Six of Swords reversed. And this is why the decision feels so heavy. Because this masculine has not fully moved on. He may have tried. He may have told himself he was leaving this behind. He may have acted like distance was the boat that would carry him out of these feelings. But reversed, the Six of Swords says something never completed. The emotional crossing never finished. He moved away physically. He moved away through silence. He moved away through distraction. But his heart stayed in the same unresolved place. And that is why your absence is hitting him so loudly now, because he is realizing he did not actually leave the connection. He only delayed the conversation. He only postponed the truth. He only carried the pain somewhere else and hoped it would become lighter with time. But it did not. And now he is standing at this point where the old pattern is no longer working. He cannot keep pretending the distance is peace. He cannot keep telling himself that silence is healing. He cannot keep sitting with a confession in his chest and calling it self-control. This is where the energy builds, because something in him is close to choosing, not perfectly, not dramatically, not in a way that feels polished and rehearsed. This may come through awkwardly. A simple message, a small opening, an apology that does not know where to begin, a late-night admission where the emotion is stronger than the words, maybe even an indirect attempt to see if the door is still open. And I want to be clear. The energy is moving, but courage is still required. He still has to decide whether he is going to stay trapped in the same loop or finally speak from the truth that broke him open last night. Because the Six of Swords reversed shows unfinished emotional passage. A person caught between leaving and returning, between pride and honesty, between I should let this go and I cannot keep lying to myself, and what comes next matters, because you are not listening only for words now. You are listening for energy. You're listening for whether something in him has truly changed, not just whether he misses you. Whether he is finally ready to stop running from what missing you means. And now we close with the Four of Swords. And this feels right. Because after all that emotion, after all that truth, after the breakdown and the confession and the pressure building in his chest, this card brings the energy back into stillness. But it is not the same stillness as before. The Hanged Man was the stillness of suspension. The Four of Swords is the stillness after something has finally been understood. This is not him avoiding the truth now. This is him sitting with it, letting it settle into his body, letting it become more than a moment of emotion, because that is what matters here. You are not listening for a beautiful sentence. You are not listening for a sudden rush of feeling that disappears the next day. You are listening for changed energy. You are listening for whether he can hold the truth after the tears are gone. And the Four of Swords shows that something in him needs to recover from the version of himself that kept running, because last night broke through the performance. It broke through the control. It broke through the old story where he could pretend this connection was something he could leave behind if he just stayed quiet long enough. And now he is being asked to rest inside the truth without escaping it. That is the confession that changes everything, not because it magically fixes every wound, not because it erases the silence, not because it makes the past disappear, but because it changes the place he is speaking from. Not ego, not pride, not control, not a performance designed to get a reaction. Surrender. And for you, Divine Feminine, this is the part to hold close. You did not force this awakening. You did not break him open by chasing. You did not make him feel what he did not already feel. You simply stopped carrying the truth for both of you. And now the truth is sitting with him, quietly, heavily, honestly. The next movement in this connection will reveal a lot, because he can miss you and still stay afraid. He can confess and still need to choose courage. But if he comes forward now, you will know. You will feel whether he is trying to return to comfort or whether he is finally ready to meet the truth he admitted. Because the truth is no longer hidden, and neither are you.